Hello jeweler, welcome to this module on the virality coefficient. Now when I first heard this term, I thought it was brilliant. I didn't realize something like this could exist, and now, working on the back end of multiple apps and seeing things from the perspective of a video marketer as well as a social media app creator, it makes so much more sense. To help you understand it, we're going to first talk about growth engines, which are different ways that a business or a brand increases its sales. Then we'll talk about breaking the barrier, which is really how you achieve not just local level success, but then also regional and statewide, nationwide, and then worldwide success. And then we'll just touch briefly on fractals and cross sections. Don't worry, those might sound kind of weird, but they're not. They're easy to understand, and you'll see how we use them to construct our business strategy moving forward. So I work on the back end of a couple apps now, but my biggest role is as a chief creative officer for a social media app that allows for cross-platform conversations and polling. Don't worry about what that means. It doesn't matter for this section at all. But at this point, we're at pre-launch, and we're still working on the product, and we hired a consultant who had helped grow other huge apps like Tinder and Hitlist and BBVA Bank. And I was personally working with the head of this consultancy group 3 or 4 times a week. I remember in one meeting that we were having, he dropped the words virality coefficient. And I thought that just sounded like the coolest thing I had ever heard. So I asked him to explain it, and he said, the virality coefficient is the likelihood that a product or a service is going to go viral. It has to be built into the product itself from the ground up. So when we think about virality or something going viral, what do you think of? What was the first viral video that you remember? For me, it's probably either Charlie Bit Me or an early video of that crazy frog. Or if you can remember way back into the 90s and when videos were just starting to get shared, it was that 3D dancing baby that went huge. You know, now, having done digital marketing for several brands, having friends with millions of followers on social media and hundreds of thousands of subscribers on YouTube, I can tell you something. The age of 100% organic viral growth is gone. In order for someone to have something go viral, they have to be really, really, really thoughtful and strategic about it. Now, there's even a scale called the virality coefficient that will rate something's ability to go viral on a scale from 1 to 10. To make it really simple, it means the average number of new customers that an average customer generates. Now, different industries have easier times with this than others simply because of the way that a product is used. For example, if I send you money on PayPal, then in order to get it, you naturally have to interact with PayPal. Now, one customer just led to another customer interacting with the app. Virality is built in. Or in fashion, I remember in high school, all those popular girls had these fluffy, impractical, soft boots called Uggs. In order to grow, the company did do marketing, but primarily the reason they grew was because the cool girls were wearing them and other girls wanted to be the cool girl. My little sister had 12 pairs of Uggs, and I'm pretty sure she's given them all away by now. A little later, the same thing happened with Alex and Ani. Girls saw cool girls wearing Alex and Ani bracelets, and each bracelet had a corresponding word or value attached to it. And by wearing the bracelet, you were signaling what you valued, and the cool girls wanted people to know what they valued, and everyone else wanted to be a cool girl, so they got Alex and Ani bracelets too. Jewelry oftentimes works very similar to fashion. The way it grows in popularity is by people seeing it on someone else, or when someone else talks about it. So this engine of growth is called the viral engine, and it's one existing It is one existing customer attracting new customers who are like them or who want to be like the existing customer. So that's the viral engine. Then we have what's called the sticky engine. The sticky engine of growth is when instead of focusing on getting new customers through virality, you focusing on delighting your current customers so they're addicted to doing business with you. For high-end jewelers, this is where clienteling comes in. So clienteling is simply serving your existing customers' needs to increase the amount of times that they buy from you or their lifetime value. So in Chicago, there's actually a jeweler who literally takes his best clients on a safari to Africa every single year. To be his best customer, you have to spend the most money. Therefore, you have the incentive to do so. When your business is sticky, it retains customers for a long time who wouldn't think of going anywhere else. These people become collectors of your products and rely on you for advice and help with their needs related to jewelry. And then the third engine of growth is called the paid engine. Now, just like it sounds, the paid engine is when you spend money for a service to show your product or advertisements to people. So as long as you're making more money on paid advertising than you're spending, then you're golden and you can continue to do it. This is where Facebook ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, Instagram ads, and influencer marketing all come into play. As I mentioned earlier, 100% viral growth is now basically gone. It doesn't happen anymore without there being some work done from the other two engines, sticky and paid. And most of the time, it's the paid engine that really sparks the most growth. So let's say you have a bracelet that girls love and you want it to grow. If you think in terms of virality, what is it that's going to get most girls to naturally want your bracelet? And how do you build a particular culture around the bracelet that encourages virality? These are just good things to think about. Now, when you get those first customers, what are you doing to delight them? And how are they being served and told about how to stay on top of the trends? Are you helping them to look their best in every situation? Are you not only providing bracelets, but possibly a fun, Instagram-worthy photo room in your store where they can take photos to look good on social media? Are you helping them to connect with causes that they care about? Just good things to think about. Now that you have customers who are sticking with your brand, how are you going to break the barrier from your first customers and reach into new areas using the paid engine? When it comes to breaking the barrier, what we mean is that you will naturally have to start with a small group of early adopters. Remember we talked about an MVA in the first video? Those early adopters are normally neophiliacs, or people who love new things, or simply your first customers who found out about you. By learning to serve them extremely well, you learn what makes them tick and what sets them apart from the rest of the world. This first barrier to break is going to go from neophiliacs to the general public. Once you have a product that people love, you can begin experimenting with paid advertising to the general public. As we had talked about earlier, this is the way we scale into greater, large audiences to get more sales. However, we can't begin to talk about scaling until we have a product that people want. And we can't market a product that people want without first creating an MVP, a minimum viable product, and trying it out on real people. This is why working with speed and agility is so important, and why we began by talking about getting your first F. You're going to fail at creating products and services that can go viral and create compound interest. That's fine. You learn and reiterate and get back up and keep going by either pivoting or persevering, like we had talked about before. Also, once we break into the general public, we can then start to increase the scope of people we market to as well. So for our family store, we found a service that people wanted and figured out how to market it to our small statewide audience. Then we increased and increased and increased until now we get customers from California and Wisconsin coming to our store in Massachusetts because we have scaled to be able to reach a nationwide audience. But when it comes to figuring out how to market to those people, there's something that is absolutely fundamental that we have to understand about who buys our products and how we go viral, and it's best explained by talking about fractals. Leonardo da Vinci said, "Study the science of art. Study the art of science. Develop your senses, especially learn how to see. Realize that everything connects to everything else." Have you ever noticed patterns in nature? Growing up in New England, we had a lot of maple trees around. And in autumn, the leaves would fall, and I remember several times as a kid picking up a maple leaf and looking at its veins. I remember thinking how interesting it was that the leaf almost looks like it was made up of smaller leaves, which looked like they were made up of smaller leaves, and it just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller the closer you got to it. The same thing would happen when I'd go for a walk on the beach in Cape Cod. Walking on the beach, there would always be conch shells everywhere. Most of the times they're broken. And if you pick up a conch shell and you look inside at the pattern of what it's made of, what you notice is an ever-repeating pattern of something small that then repeats and becomes larger and larger and larger within the shell. And you find this same thing happening all over nature. You see succulents that have growth spirals that are just the same pattern repeating over and over and over again, getting larger and larger. And the same is true if you look into outer space as well. We know that everything that has mass has gravity, but we don't normally observe gravity between objects unless it has to do with the Earth. But in the same way that we are attracted to the Earth, so is the moon, and it rotates around the Earth. And the Earth is attracted to the sun, and the Earth rotates around the sun. And the sun and all of the planets in our solar system revolve around the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And even our own galaxy, the Milky Way, is a part of several solar systems which orbit around their common center of gravity. The same pattern, simply getting infinitely larger and larger and larger. So these patterns that I'm talking about are called fractals. A fractal is just a mathematical shape or pattern, such as the golden ratio, which has infinite scale. So why are we talking about fractals then? Because this same pattern exists not just within nature, but within your biology and within economics and within sociology and within marketing too. If you've ever sold a piece of jewelry, what you're doing is you're tapping into a fractal, a pattern. That person who bought that piece of jewelry is a part of a pattern, just a small part. Even though it's just one person or just two people, they represent a pattern of other people. The way they think, act, feel, perceive the world, the problems they have, they're all common and consistent with other people that are like them. The people that you've sold to before are a small, tiny cross-section of a much, much, much larger group of people, a niche market. So even though you've only ever met 10 or 20 of these people personally or sold to them, what you're seeing is just a sliver of a gigantic fractal that can be repeated endlessly as long as the population continues to grow. The problem is that you're solving for these 10 people is the same problem that millions of other people have. And by discovering how to help those 10 people, you're actually discovering the exact formula for helping millions of others as well, who are similar to the people that you've already helped. When you begin to see the world in this way, that each person you serve is a representative of a massively large group of people, you begin to understand how it's possible for what you do to go viral among that massive group of people, even though you've only ever served a small amount of people. So if it turns out that there are 10 people who have bought engagement rings from you before, then guess what that means? There are millions of other people that you can serve as well. And that very large group is called your niche market. But this brings up a good question. Let's say you do have a niche market and you have a perfect offer that they love and it solves their problems. Why is it that not everyone buys from you? And this is very important to think about, because if we don't recognize this, then we'll be infinitely frustrated and think that we've done something wrong. Think about the last time that you bought something over $100 or $200 that you did at least a little bit of research on. For me, it was hiking poles. I was going to go on a few 25-mile plus day hikes, and I wanted to make sure that I had the best hiking poles that I possibly could have for those hikes. Well, you could say that from the time that I gained an affinity for hiking, I became eligible for buying hiking poles. That's to say that I was in the niche market of every company that sells hiking poles, right? But did I end up buying poles as soon as I realized that I liked hiking? No, I didn't. I went on a lot of hikes without them. I got some cheaper poles to start, or I borrowed poles from other friends for some hikes. Even though I was in the niche market, I wasn't ready to buy nice poles quite yet. The pain hadn't gotten large enough that I just needed it to be fixed. Not until I planned out multiple seriously strenuous hikes in a short period of time. Then, finally, when I was ready, I went searching for poles, and the ones that I thought were the best ones available at the time are the ones that I bought. And I love them. They're great. But here's what happened. I was in the correct niche market, but I didn't buy immediately. Why not? Because I wasn't ready. The same thing is true with engagement rings. As soon as a guy is in a serious relationship with a girl, he falls into the niche market of engagement ring providers. However, does a guy immediately go out and buy the first engagement ring that he sees as soon as he has feelings for a girl? No, he doesn't. Not most of the time, at least. Normally, he takes some time and he sits on the idea for a little bit until he feels totally ready to make the jump and purchase. And when he's ready, he does everything he can to learn about engagement rings and find the best one for his price range possible. In marketing, there's a good rule of thumb that we want to follow, and it's called the rule of 3%. This rule states that at any given time, only 3% of your niche market will actually be ready to buy. So what this means is that if there are 1 million guys in your area who are eligible for engagement rings, only 3% of them are currently in the researching to buy phase. Most of them have it in the back of their minds, but they're not quite ready yet. The same is true for everything you sell. So because this is true, what we want to do is seek to serve those 3%, those who are ready to buy, with all that we have. We might have a huge market of people that we could serve, but only 3% of them are going to be ready to buy. Everyone else can be ignored for the time being. This is true for you too. Whatever that last thing that you bought was, you probably wanted it for a long time, but just sat on the idea until you were ready to buy it. That is how your customers act as well. So how do we use this to go viral within our niche market? We focus on failing as fast as we can by creating minimum viable products until we find an offer that we can scale within a niche market. Then, realizing that we have something with a lot of scaling potential, we use our viral engine, our sticky engine, and our paid engine of growth to let those 3% of the market know that we're here to help them to solve their problem when they're ready. We say, hey, I'm here to solve your problem, to fulfill your mass desire. And when it comes time for them to do business with us, we will be ready for them. And they will be convinced that we're the best option because they've heard of us, they trust us, and we put ourselves out there at the right time. But in order to do this properly and not spend all of our lives doing nothing but marketing, we need to create a system that allows us to take advantage of compound interest. Once we serve that 3%, we can then move on to the next 3%. And then the next 3%. And the more success we have, the more we reinvest into the system. So this process allows us to reach our entire niche market, to be the best at what we do, and to enjoy our lives at the same time because we're creating systems that don't rely on us, yet they make more and more money as time goes on. And one thing to note about that 3% is that it continually moves in a cycle, so that as soon as that first 3% has been satisfied, another 3% of people will move in to your niche market so that your niche market can never truly become saturated with your offer. Good job getting through success psychology. Now that you have the vocabulary to understand what we're going to do, big picture, let's now focus on the most important part of your future, you. I'll see you in the next video.